We're so regularly served up tragedy from all over the world via our screens. It's very upsetting, can be overwhelming, and leave you wondering what you can do to help people in harm's way. And one thing we need to do is admit that the United States is not the moral compass of the world. It's not the leader of the free world in any meaningful, aspirational way. It's the largest by GDP, but wealth has never been a proxy for character, not in individuals and not in corporations and not for countries. Even with the largest GDP, it's still 112th in wealth inequality, 50th in infant mortality, 125th in literacy. It is 25th on PISA scores for reading, science and maths. The minimum federal wage in the States is still $7.25. It's been the same since 2009. And for those whose brains don't quite work properly around years like mine doesn't, that was 13 years ago. A lot has happened in those last 13 years. Out of 11th high earning countries, it's ranked 11th in healthcare outcomes, while being the most expensive. And the land of the free is the most locked up, incarcerated country on the planet by population and by number, with over 2 million people in prisons in the States. It beggars belief that we would follow the lead, the moral lead, from a country that allows all of these things to be happening simultaneously and still prioritizes military spending, for instance, over looking after its own people or foreign aid or having a positive impact in the world more broadly. Our opportunity is to be a shining beacon of what is possible, how it is possible to look after people and bring people along and have great healthcare outcomes and greater quality of opportunity and great accessibility to meaningful lives of connection and community. Make sure people aren't left behind. Make sure that wealth inequality and income inequality doesn't blow out to astronomical proportions and just leave entire places and areas of the country decimated. And also to be a good friend as a country and as people. We can't vote in the elections in the States. We have little to no say over what happens in the Senate. And cultures of outrage probably contribute to this very partisan politics of which we see all the time and have seen try to be implemented in Australia. And I think we successfully sort of battered away the first attempts at it with the most recent election. But we can't be a part of this outrage culture and expect that that we're setting a good example for other countries who are maybe further down the line or on their way. We can't reward that outrage. If the United States was a friend of mine that had lots of money but liked to get into fights all the time, so no one wanted to say anything to them because, well, they've got lots of money, they won't pay for things, they won't do that, or, oh, they're big and strong and they will punch on, they'll do those sorts of things. I would still not be a good friend if I didn't say, hey man, you're not looking after people, you're not doing a good job, you're not being as good as you could be. What's the point of hanging on to all that accumulated wealth and not using it to look after people for whom you're directly responsible as well, like your family and your friends and your community? And, you know, the United States is a notoriously punchy country. It's only like 250 years old, a little bit under. They've been in over 100 wars, including wars with their first peoples on the continent, you know, now known as America. So we need to be a better example. We need to tell the truth. We need to align our aspirations and our moral compass with the best that is possible, with the most inclusive, most equal and best practice versions of looking after people, running a country, building an economy, and doing all those things. Because a huge GDP counts for nothing if you're going to allow people to just die on your watch or be at risk or in harm's way or homeless or out of work or unable to spend time with their families or in prison. And none of that is something that we should aspire to. Obviously, the most recent tragedy, and they just happen with such alarming regularity now that it's even hard to say, oh, the most recent, because we barely get over the first reports of shooting deaths, and we're just confronted with another one. But in my lifetime in the States, there have been nearly 1,000 people killed in mass shooting incidents, and that's only if you just count mass shootings as a single shooter and over 4 victims. And in those same shooting incidences, 1,400 odd injured as well. But last year, the deaths, 45,000, over 45,000 gun deaths. And we still have people advocating for looser gun regulations here. We need to be good citizens, good friends to other countries, and make sure that our aspirations are always for the very best. People or countries with lots of money are not necessarily the people that we should be following for our character building activities or for our moral North Star. And while some people will say, oh, we already don't think that about America, I say, yeah, that's great. There's people that do, and certainly in the global sense. We still call it the leader of the free world. They still sit at the head of every table of international diplomacy. We need to make sure that we're clear that that is not a vision for the country that we have, and move away from anything that looks like it would steer us in that direction, because we can be so much better, and we can be an example, not just for the States, but for other countries as well, to keep people out of harm's way, look after each other, and be the very best that we can be. And I think if you can take some comfort, is probably the wrong word, but if you can take a little bit of patience from the idea that if we maintain a course towards being the best we can be, then we provide that good example, and then we also have the authority in some moral sense to call out the bad behaviour of our friends, whether they're countries or individuals, and say, hey, that's not okay, and we would like to see better, and amplify the voices of people who are already saying that in those countries and in those areas as well. And probably move away from outrage as currency all the time. Advocate for less outrage, less partisan discussions, less screaming at each other from across the aisle, more understanding, more opportunity, more equality, and being better, because we really need to advocate for better at home and abroad, and be the most positive part of that conversation that we can be. It's otherwise just too much to bear. So I hope you're okay, and I hope that we can move in that direction. It's incredibly important. Lots of love.